Hi everyone and welcome to OVERMUGGED. Today we'll be going over the P5 English mock paper. And before we begin, perhaps a round of introduction. My name is Ms. Cassandra. I spent the past decade teaching English, and not only have I been taking classes of my own, I've also been training and mentoring other educators. I also dabble a little in curating curriculum. So I've guided about 1,000 students to their PSLE as well as their O levels, and I'm really happy that my previous year of P6s were able to achieve very good scores, and 75% of them were able to get their EL1. So with that, perhaps a fun fact for myself, I'm still learning how to eat vegetables. All right. So today's materials as well as resources can all be found on our OVERMUGGED website. So feel free to scan the QR code down here so that you can get our papers and answer sheets and also links to our video lessons. All right. So without further ado, let's begin. Today, we'll be looking at the P5 English mock paper, and this is a paper that you should have completed before watching the video. Okay, and this paper too has two booklets, booklet A as well as booklet B. But what I do want to point out is that if you have older siblings taking the PSLE, you'll note that their PSLE paper is going to be a little bit different from yours. These are going to be some key changes from 2025. Basically, both the booklet A, visual text comprehension, as well as the booklet B, editing exercises, have a reduction in the number of questions. Specifically, the visual text will drop from 8 questions to 5, whereas the editing will be reduced by 2 questions. So in total, the entire booklet A and B will see a reduction of the score from 95 to 90. So where are these 5 missing marks going? So they're going to your oral examinations. All right. So later on, we'll take a look at the one perhaps with the more drastic change, which will be the visual text comprehension. So let's begin with booklet A. We'll start with the grammar MCQ. Right. So question number 1 goes, the service at the restaurant was appalling. Sharon decided to leave a scathing review. So there are some words here that we need to double check to make sure you understand the question. So when something is appalling, it's horrifying or it's shocking, so it's terrible, right? So in this case, Sharon decided to leave a review that is scathing. So it's a critical assessment, probably something not so great. So because of this, the only conjunction that is appropriate and fitting for this particular question has to be option number 1. So, question 2. Matilda rarely misses lessons, blank she, asked the teacher. Now, this is a question tag question. Okay, so usually what happens is you have 2 segments of the question. On the first half, it's either a positive or negative question statement, and then the question tag will have to be the corresponding opposite. So in this case, rarely is a question tag that is negative. Commonly tested would be other words like seldom or hardly. Now, because this is a negative question tag, the blank that I'm looking for has to be a positive one, which means that options 3 and 4 are definitely out. So the only answer I am left with is, does she or has she? In this particular case, you could try to rephrase the question. Matilda does not miss lessons, or Matilda has not missed lessons, right? You will find that Matilda does not miss lessons. Does she? Option number 1 would make more sense. Next, we have question number 3. By this time next month, Grandpa blank his gardening course. In this particular case, you need to look out for the time marker because your options here are testing you on tenses. So the time marker in this case is by this time next month, which happens to be a future event. There is only one option here that is for the future, and that's option 4. Question 4. You need to work on this matter blank. You cannot rely on me to resolve it for you, the manager admonished his workers. Now, this might seem like a simple and straightforward question, but it's actually quite tricky because you need to look at who the manager is talking to. In this case, he's talking to his workers, and there are many of them, which means that option 1 and 2 are not correct. So you're only left with you need to work on this matter ourselves or yourselves. So in this case, we have to pick option 4. Moving on. Question number 5. Given his stellar track record, there is blank doubt that he will be offered the position of team lead. So let's check the question for understanding first. A stellar track record is someone who has an excellent reputation. So if he is going to be offered the position of team lead, is it with little, much, many, or some doubt? Going by logic, it would be little, because doubt is an uncountable noun. Question 6. Blank, you informed me earlier I would have been able to shift my appointments around and meet you today. Now, this question is very similar to a conditional question. In a third conditional, you are typically given a scenario where something could have happened, but it didn't, typically used to express regret. So in this case, the word that is closest to the word if is actually had. So had you informed me earlier, I would have been able to make changes. So that's what this question is asking for. Question 7. The team looked into blank their flow by researching new software options. In this particular case, did you notice something interesting about the question? There's a phrasal verb looked into. Whenever you have a phrasal verb followed by a blank, you should be looking to place a gerund in it. A gerund is a verb that functions as a noun, and typically it's easy to spot because it ends with 3 letters, ing. So in this case, the team looked into improving. You might be wondering, are there other words that are similar? Well, phrasal verbs are often used in everyday speech. So you could possibly be talking to your friends and you could say, oh, I look forward to traveling to Japan, but you won't say, I look forward to travel to Japan. All right. Finally, question 8. Amanda made her classmate blank after calling her names and leaving her out of the games. In this case, you are tested on 4 tenses: cry, cries, cried, and crying. There is a special verb here, which is made. Now, made is a verb that when it's paired with a blank here, the blank must be a naked verb. In your school, your teachers might tell you it's the base form, but basically it's the verb that has no S, no ED, and no ING. So it is not option 2, option 3, or 4. So our answer can only be option 1. The last 2 questions of grammar MCQ. Question 9. Blank his quick thinking, Maximus was able to slip away from his pursuers. In this case, if Maximus was able to react quickly and escape from his pursuers, the only option here that explains this correlation is option 3, owing to. So owing to has the same meaning as due to or thanks to. And question number 10. We already blanked dinner by the time the movie started. Now, this is a question that is testing you on something that happened before in the past and is already completed. So what I mean is this. There is one past action, which is the movie started. But when you're trying to refer to something that is further back in the past, we can't just use another past tense to explain it. In this case, dinner happened before the movie. So we all need to use something to explain an older past action. We'll need past perfect tense. So past perfect tense in this case would be option 3. We had already eaten dinner. So how do you do for the 10 grammar MCQ questions? I hope it was okay. Let's move on to the next segment. We're going to be looking at the vocabulary MCQ. So for vocabulary, if there were any words that you were confused with as you were doing the paper, now would be a good time to take down the definitions. Feel free to pause the videos to help you with your note-taking. Question number 11. Thanks to the blank of the eyewitness, the suspect was declared innocent and released on the spot. In this particular case, the eyewitness did something so that the suspect was declared innocent and let off. So, is it a verification, a testimonial, a clarification, or an identification? In this particular case, let's take a look at verification, which is basically a confirmation of something, right? A testimonial, however, is a detailed account of what had happened. So in this particular case, we would have to use the answer to a testimonial because that is the one that is able to prove the suspect's innocence. Question number 12. I was blanked by the abrupt blaring of the horn. I did not expect the alarm to be so deafening. In this case, when you did not expect something, it probably means you're shocked or surprised. So for question number 12, if you take a look at all the options given, they are all phrasal verbs. And they all have a different meaning. So let's take a look at them. Option 1, taken up. When you take up something, you are likely to start a new activity or hobby or an interest, maybe baking. When you take over, you assume the responsibility from someone else. So perhaps if you are a P6 student who is leaving school, you would probably have a P5 student take over your responsibilities. Option 3, we have taken down. So taken down means to disassemble. So usually if let's say you go to a party and all the arrangements are put up, you would take them down at the end of it and return the room to its original state. And the last one, taken aback, which is shocked. Therefore, it's our answer, taken aback. For question number 13, during the debate, he was forced to blank that his opponent had presented a stronger argument. In this case, you have 4 options: admit, accede, concede, and succumb. Take a look at the phrase here, forced to blank. In this case, if you have to, I suppose because you're losing to someone who has presented a stronger argument, then I guess it's a rightful win, right? Let's look at the definitions here. When you accede, you agree to something after some resistance. So perhaps you might be familiar with this when you're making requests from your parents. Maybe, Mommy, can I sleep a little bit later tonight? I really want to catch the show, just 10 minutes. So after much negotiation, Mommy says, okay, that's Mom acceding to your request. Concede is actually a reluctant acceptance. Usually we pair it with to concede defeat. And the last one is succumb. Succumb is to yield or to give in. Typically, you could say that I succumbed to temptations and I decided to buy myself a bubble tea. Or I succumbed to temptations and I decided to sleep in a little bit more, but I ended up being late. So in this case, because of the idea of being forced, it's a reluctant acceptance. You conceded to your opponent. Question number 40. Jared's anger bled when he realized his brother had vandalized on his prized collection of Lionel Messi memorabilia. In this particular case, let's take a look at the context of vandalize on someone's prized possession. A prized possession is something that is really precious and really important to you. So in this case, it would be natural that Jared would be angry. We're trying to describe his level of anger getting worse. So is it swelled, where it increased in intensity, or accumulated, where it gathered over time? Because the idea that we're trying to convey here is anger and emotion. Your emotion can swell. It cannot accumulate. Accumulate is probably better used for things that you can actually collect. Countable objects. Next one, the last question for the vocabulary MCQ. The tenant was blank from the apartment after failing to pay rent for the past 3 months. Now, a tenant is someone who rents an apartment. So the house doesn't actually belong to him. He has to pay the landlord. So imagine if someone rented something from you to use, but he hasn't been paying out, you would probably take that item away or you would kick the person out. In this case, the word that we're looking for is to kick someone out of the apartment. And it cannot be relocated because relocated is to move away to another place. Some of you might have done it before when you shifted from your previous house to your current one. So the only answer for question 15 is option 1. Oh, sorry, option 2. Let's move on to vocabulary close MCQ. In the vocabulary close MCQ, you're given a short passage, and this passage was talking about phantom limb. So phantom limb is an interesting medical condition where people who have already lost their limbs due to medical reasons or perhaps an unfortunate accident, they're still able to feel sensations in the limbs that is no longer there. So let's take a look at question number 16. In 16, it mentions in the missing limb. Now, this limb was originally there, but it's no longer there, all right? So the best answer to describe this is absent. It cannot be hidden. It cannot be broken either. Question number 17. An intriguing phenomenon. When something is intriguing, is it fascinating, boring, mysterious, or bewildering? Perhaps the one word that you're not sure of is bewildering, which refers to confusing. So in this case, the passage is actually taking interest in this phenomenon because it's fascinating. And that's the two answers for question 16 and 17. Question number 18 talks about the brain's map of the body remaining intact even after a limb is removed. So in this case, your brain remembers where your body parts are, even if you were to close your eyes. And that is the brain's map. For instance, you can try it. Close your eyes. Can you put your finger to your nose? I'm sure you can find it without having to look, right? So in this case, when the map of the body remains intact, does it mean to be refreshed? Or does it mean to be immaculate? Or perfect or clean? In this case, because something is untouched, the best answer is whole. Question 19. They say that pain is a challenging aspect of post-amputation recovery. When something is challenging, is it vigorous, as in full of energy, or is it uninhibited, as in not restrained? Neither of these answers are correct. The best option is actually demanding. It's an uphill task. And finally, for question 20, it mentions how knowing about phantom pain can enhance our knowledge. So enhancing our knowledge is a positive word. The only two positive words that we have are option 2 and 4. In option 2, and bolsters means to strengthen, and encourages would actually be a verbal encouragement to support someone. So because we're talking about knowledge here, the option of 2 is appropriate. And that wraps up the vocabulary close MCQ. Finally, for Booklet A, we have the visual text comprehension. Now, this is the one where it's going to be different for you, especially if you're sitting for PSLE English paper in 2025. So you'll notice that the visual text comprehension now is 2 different text, but they are related to each other. In your paper, you'll note that text 1 was a poster about an immersive dining experience, whereas text 2 was sort of an interview between an attendee of the Banquet of Ho Chi as well as a reporter. So your task is to answer the 5 MCQ questions by looking at the materials of text 1 and 2 and comparing them across. So let's take a look at text 1. Question 21, it asks, based on text 1, the Banquet of Ho Chi is ideal for the following options. When something is ideal, you should have been able to mark out your clues in the Banquet of Ho Chi. It is an extraordinary dining adventure. And thus, because of this statement, question 21's answer is option 3, because people will be interested in a dining experience like no other, therefore unique. Question 22, what genre best describes the story that unfolds during the Banquet of Ho Chi as mentioned in text 1? Now the genre is actually explained here, but you'll notice that it also specifies the realm of fairies and folklore. Therefore, the best genre to suit this is the genre of fantasy. Let's move on to text 2. Now, text 2 is an interview. Question 23 asks, based on text 2, the following statements about the Banquet of Ho Chi is correct, except for, which means that there are 3 statements here that are correct. Only one is wrong, and you're supposed to pick the one that is wrong. I hope you do not fall for the trick question. In this case, the clue comes from the attendee who says, well, as a small eater, I found it just right, which means that the meal was not more filling than expected, which makes option 4 the wrong answer. Question 24, what is the purpose of the interview in text 2? Now, if you look carefully at all the given options, the only one that is most suitable for this answer is actually option 1, because the attendee is giving a personal review of her experience. Okay, it's not to compare, neither is it to advertise. That brings us to the last question, question 25. Now, question 25 requires you to take text 2, text 1, and compare them across. So in this case, you are supposed to find a statement from text 2 that describes the dining experience of text 1. So if you look at text 1, the following phrases highlighted here tells you about the dining experience. So all of these positive phrases tells you that the most appropriate statement from text 2 will be option 2. It's a bit of a splurge, but you're paying for more than just a meal. And with that, we're done with booklet A. Let's move on to booklet B. Hang in there, we're halfway through. For booklet B, we'll start with the grammar clause. I'm not sure if any of you have been to Bird Paradise, but if this passage intrigued you, head on down. You'll find the southern cassowary bird right there. Okay, so let's take a look at your closed passage. Let's venture into question number 26, which starts with a southern cassowary chick has been successfully hatched at Birdland Park, blank, the United Kingdom. When we're talking about a place, then we say that it's in the United Kingdom, because the United Kingdom is a big space. Okay. Question 27. It is known blank its immense size. Now, when you are famous or you are known, the word that's often paired together is that you're known for something. In this case, it's a really big bird. Question number 28. Blank these giant flightless birds. You'll notice that we're talking about plural subjects, birds. So in this case, it has to be these not this. Question 29. The keepers in Birdland Park, they have been breeding these birds for blank 25 years. When you're talking about a span of time, we often use the word for over a period of time. And finally, these birds are native blank the tropical forests of New Guinea. So they can only be found in those areas naturally. So native is always paired with to. Native to. Let's move on. Leading solitary lives, cassowaries are predominantly frugivorous. Interesting, right? It means that they only feed blank fruits. When you're feeding, you are feeding on something. Question 32. Although these birds are big, they are only the third tallest birds, and they blank ostriches and emus. So if we go by rank, ostriches is the first, followed by emu, followed by cassowaries. So they are the third tallest after ostriches and emus. Question number 33, I have something interesting to show you. Now, these birds possess powerful legs equipped blank sharp dagger-like claws that are up to 10 cm long. So if you think about it, imagine your nails growing for 10 cm and it is sharp. And this is exactly what a cassowary feet looks like. You'll notice it really is quite similar to that of a dinosaur, right? So the phrase equipped has to be equipped with. Question 34. Now these claws, combined with their impressive speed and strength, it contributes blank reputation as one of the world's most dangerous birds. In this case, we're talking about the reputation of the birds. So it has to be its, I-T-S, without the apostrophe. If you had picked the word with an apostrophe, IT apostrophe S, it means something else. It means it is or it has. So it doesn't fit the statement grammatically. The last one is an interesting thing about the cassowary eggs. It has a green color. And this is what it looks like, the size of an adult human's palm. So these eggs, because we're talking about the color of the eggs, color is referring to something singular. So it has to be is. If you had put the word R-A-R-E, it's because you saw the word eggs and you thought, plural. So you got tricked there. Let's move on to the next segment, which is the editing. So editing is talking about an International Day of Play. And it's really interesting because it's officially a day where you could say that you want to just relax, put away your books, go out under the sun, spend some time exercising, and it would be appropriate. So editing, even though the changes for 2025 is a reduction of 2 questions, you will still be tested on spelling as well as grammar. For the purpose of today's lesson, all the spelling errors will be highlighted in green for you, whereas the grammar ones will be in orange. So let's take a look. Question 36 is a spelling word. You're embracing the joy of play. Question 37, play is crucial. Question 38 is the first grammar question. It says here that playtime is packed by learning opportunities. Now, the grammar word is wrong because it's not packed by, but packed with opportunities. Question 39 is also a grammar question, but read the full statement. From building with blocks, play, pretend, to run around in the park. We should have a consistent grammar, in this case, a continuous tense across the questions. So for question 39, it's building, playing, and therefore running. Question number 40 a grammar question. They learn how to solve problems, work as a team, and let your imaginations run wild. Notice that I underlined the word they because of the subject they. It cannot be your, but their. Question 41 and 42 are both spelling words. Please double check. Benefit has two E's in it, whereas creativity starts with the letter C. Let's move on to the next one. Question 43. Children and adults can join with games and activities. In this case, if you're going to the play festival, you don't join with the games and activities, but you participate. So you join in the games and activities. Question 44 is a spelling word. It makes play accessible. Accessible is spelled with A-C-C-E-S-S. Double C, double S. I hope no one here tried to spell access with E-X-C-E-S-S. That means something else. It means something that's extra. Last one, question 45. Okay. You can mark the occasion in setting aside some time for play. In this case, if you're going to mark the occasion, you mark the occasion by doing something. So those are all 10 grammar questions. Let's move on to comprehension close, which I think is probably a huge pitfall for most of our students here. But not to worry, we'll go through. But as I'm going through, perhaps something to have you think about. Usually for your comprehension close, you are tested on 3 kinds of questions. The first kind is a test of your vocabulary. So it could either be a fixed phrase or a collocation or an idiom. The second kind requires you to understand the passage so that you can fill in the blank with an appropriate word. So as I'm going through this comprehension close, we'll be looking at both kinds of questions now. All right? Let's start. If you were out and about in September earlier this year, you might have been victim to this particular thunderstorm that we're going to be talking about. Let's begin. Singapore is no stranger to thunderstorms, especially during the monsoon season. However, a particular thunderstorm that blank in September left its mark on the island. Now, this thunderstorm blank in September, I want to say that it took place in September, but I can only fit it with one blank. So another word for took place is it occurred in September. Next sentence, starting with question 47. Blank is the Sumatra squall. The weather phenomenon is a line of thunderstorm that develops over Sumatra, Indonesia. So this weather phenomenon has a term for it. It's blank as the Sumatra squall. Therefore, this is a fixed phrase. It is known as. Okay. Be sure to start your answer with a capital letter K because this starts a sentence. Question 48. The thunderstorm begins in Indonesia and it moves blank the Straits of Malacca to Singapore and Malaysia. We're trying to convey the idea that the thunderstorm is traveling towards Singapore. So question 48, it moves across the Straits of Malacca. Okay. Question 49. Something interesting about the Sumatra squall is it is blank by gusty winds and thundery showers. So if you fall victim to it, you would know that the rain was probably pelting you that day. So it is characterized by gusty winds and thundery showers. And that's the first 4 questions that we have completed for the comprehension close. 4 down, 11 to go. But before we do so, perhaps some images to give you an understanding of what had happened for those of you who were lucky to be at home. Okay. These were pictures taken on the day or the day after the Sumatra squall in September this year. We have trees, huge tall trees that were uprooted. And then in the UOB Plaza over here, we had glass, overhanging glass that had fallen down onto the road below. I believe the car had narrowly avoided being hit. And of course, traffic that was being blocked. So let's continue. Question number 50. Blank the squall lasted barely an hour. It was extremely destructive. So you would think that for something that actually only happened for 45 minutes, it would just be the usual. But no, it was actually extremely disruptive. So for that, to show the contrast, I need a conjunction here in question number 50 that shows that though it was only an hour, it was extremely disruptive. And along the way, as it happened, netizens or people who are active on the internet, they took to blank media to report uprooted trees and damaged infrastructure. So in this case, this is a fixed phrase. I hope you were able to guess it. They took to social media to start posting and sharing about their observations. In one particular video, two women were holding umbrellas, but they were seen blank to walk against the wind. If you have to walk against the wind that is blowing in your face, sometimes you might even have to lean forward or lean into the wind. So they were walking with difficulty. Question number 52, the best answer is they were struggling to walk against the wind. Question 53. The fallen trees blank the major roads, disrupting traffic flow. So if the cars can no longer move, what did the trees do? The trees had obstructed those roads. Question 54. From pool furniture to traffic cones and bicycles, various objects were seen sliding across the blank, carried by the strong gusts. In this case, I don't know if you have seen those videos online or maybe even on Mothership, but you would see the pool furniture being swept by the wind and ending up in the pool itself. So all of these objects were sliding across the ground. Question 55. Local heroes emerged in the blank. So what happened after the thunderstorm was over? In this case, it's a fixed phrase, in the aftermath. Question 56. Residents and motorists blanked the rain to clear the forsaken trees and debris. Now, if you had recalled the picture that I had shown you earlier, people were standing along the roads, holding umbrellas near the trees that was blocking the bus. These people, they blank the rain. This is a phrase that means braved the rain. That means they stood there to face the elements. And question 57. Others pitched in, taking it upon themselves to direct blank to ensure that vehicles could pass through safely. So what were people doing? They were trying to direct traffic so that no one is stalled or stuck behind those obstructions. And that's it. The last three questions for your comprehension close. Now, climate experts blank that incidents like this will not only increase in frequency, but they are also difficult to predict due to their complex nature. So if it's going to happen more frequently, and it's also difficult to predict, it's going to be a lot harder. So these climate experts are giving a warning. They are warning us. Question 59. It's a phrase. Because of the unpredictability, we need to blank vigilant. In this case, we need to remain vigilant. Last one, question 60. These storms are more likely to happen in the blank. So this one, I think, was quite easy. It's in the future. How is it so far? I hope you're doing okay. So finally, we have our S&T. Now, our S&T this time was quite manageable, but some of these questions were trick questions. Let's see if you were able to spot them. Question 61. None of the students in this class was early for assembly. In this case, your keywords are none of them was early. Your given word is all of the students. When you have to flip from none to all and you swing it to the opposite, it means that all of the students in this class were late. A common pitfall would be to write all of the students in this class was late. In that case, you would have a subject-verb agreement error. It has to be were because all is plural. Question 62 is a question which you have to do a reported speech for. Usually, for such questions, your school teachers might have told you this before, but there are 4 things you need to change. I like to call it the toilet paper party time rule, so TPPT. It stands for tense, pronoun, time, and place. Let's mark out those keywords within the question with the same color. For tense, we have did and see. We need to change this from past tense, did see, past perfect tense. Next, we have the pronoun you. So who is you referring to here? In this case, you is referring to me or I. Time, in this case, is yesterday. So when you report time, you can either say the previous day or the day before. Personally, I prefer the first one. And the last one is place. In this case, this becomes that. Here becomes there, right? So if we put them all together and we transform the answers, it will look like this. Jamie asked me if I had seen that cat at the void deck the previous day. Let's move on to question 63. City ripped the card to shreds. She was furious. In this case, your prompt is in blank. The word that we'll need to change is furious, and we need to change it to a noun. So this is the only challenging bit of this question. Do you know what the noun of furious is? If you confuse this with curious, where curious becomes curiosity, you might have said that furious is furiosity, but that's not a proper word. The answer is fury. So city ripped the card to shreds in fury. Next one, question 64. Mr. Gomez reviewed what was hidden inside the mystery box. He saw that Elijah was curious. So, seeing Elijah's what? Elijah was curious. So can we change curious to curiosity now? Can you spell it accurately? Because the common pitfall is that you tend to spell curiosity for you as well, but it's not supposed to be there. So take a look at curiosity. It's C-U-R-I-O-S-I-T-Y. 65. Matthew decided to feign ignorance. He did not want to own up to his mistake. In this case, your prompt is instead of. So instead of doing what? Instead of owning up to his mistakes. So Matthew decided to feign ignorance. We'll need to change the word own to owning up. Those were the 5 S&T questions. And that brings us to the last segment, the comprehension open-ended. I hope that while you were doing your comprehension, you were actually highlighting clues from the passage. By doing so, you can actually use it to double check that your answers are correct. So as I'm going through the 10 questions next, we will be going through the clue sourcing as well. So are you ready? Okay. Question 66. From paragraph 1, pick out 2 separate forward phrases. So it means I need forwards and forwards, 2 separate phrases to tell me that the rice fields were very important to Yone and his fellow villagers. The phrases are pride of our people, as well as lifeblood of the village. So These are the two language questions for comprehension. Let's move on. Question 67. Based on the information from paragraphs 2 and 4, fill in the blanks in the following table. So it's a 3-column table. In the first column, you ask how Grandpa felt, what made Grandpa react that way, and in the final column, what did Grandpa do? So let's take a look at paragraph 2 to answer our first row. There was a vibration running through the ground. Now, this keyword is the same keyword that you can find in paragraph 2. So look around this clue. How did Grandpa feel at that point in time? You'll notice that Yone says his eyes were sharp with unease. So how did Grandpa feel? Grandpa could have felt worried. He could have felt uneasy as well. Both answers will be fine. That leads us to the next one. What did Grandpa do? So look again at paragraph 2. When Grandpa was worried, what did he do? He called Yone over to his side. In this case, you cannot simply copy the clue and put it into your answer. You need to do a reported speech. So this would be the best way to phrase it. Grandfather called Yone over to his side. Let's move on to paragraph 4. In paragraph 4, Grandpa felt shocked and he told Yone to bring him a piece of wood from the hearth, which is a fireplace. But what exactly made Grandfather react this way? Now, let's go to paragraph 4. Do you see these two lines? They are should not tell phrases. His breath caught and his eyes widened. This is to indicate that he was shocked. So what made Grandpa shocked? Should you be looking before this line or after this line? If you manage to find the clue after, which is this, you would have gotten it right. But you can't simply say, what made Grandfather react that way? A tidal wave. What was so special about this tidal wave? It was approaching them. That would have been a full answer. Okay. Next one, let's take a look at question 68. Grandfather, I screamed, panic surging through me. What are you doing? Now this is taken from paragraph 6, line 3, which is right here. You're supposed to circle one word that describes Yone's tone here. Now, if you couldn't quite decide it, what was happening is over here. Perhaps another line further down in paragraph 8 would help you to better understand. So how was he feeling here? He was feeling confused. Let's move on. Question 69. Using information from paragraph 8, you're supposed to tell me how the scene of the fire affected Yone. Now, this question, while it appears easy, the clues can be found. It requires you to paraphrase. So let me show you. The first one talks about the sense of smell. In paragraph 8, you literally see the word smell right there. The smell of the burning rice filled the air, acrid and bitter, choking me. So how did it affect Yone? Start with your subject first. Yone choked on the acrid and bitter smell of burning rice. Now this would have been a clearer conveyance of how it affected Yone. Let's try with the sense of touch. Okay. When you touch or use your hands to feel things, it allows you to feel things like surfaces, whether it's smooth or rough, but it also allows you to feel temperature, something that's cold or hot. Now, in this case, the clue is feeling the heat of the flames surge around us. If you copied the clue directly, you would not have gotten the mark. You must tell me how it affected Yone. So start again with the subject Yone. Yone could feel the heat of the flames as it surged around them. Let's move on. Question 70. Why did Yoni and the villagers have to clamber up the mountain? In this case, the question is asking you for why, which means that you must give reason. In fact, because it's a 2-mark question, you have to give 2 reasons. So look carefully. This question doesn't tell you which paragraph to source from, but how did I know I should be sourcing from paragraph 9? That's because the keywords are right here, same as the question, clamber up the mountain. So look around this line. Should I be finding the reason before or after? Now, if you had said before, you're on the right track. The clues are these 2. They were driven by the need to escape the spreading flames and to seek fresh air away from the smoke and the heat. Now, with this clue, be sure to start your answer with the correct subject, which is Yoni and the villagers. You can say Yoni and the villagers, or you can simply say they. They needed to escape. And that would be the answer. Let's move on to question 71. 71 is a giveaway question. You should be able to identify the order in which these events occurred. We'll start with the earliest one, which is the second statement from paragraph 9. They were alerted by the thick black smoke, followed by the villagers confronting Yoni as well as his grandfather. And finally, number 3, the village was submerged in water. Next, question 72. Question 72 is a word reference question. The idea here is that whatever the word is mentioned or picked up from the passage, the answer that you put into this box should ideally replace the position of those words and read in a grammatically sound manner. So let me show you. Let's refer to the sentence first. Don't just look at the word, look at the sentence or the phrase here. I love those fields dearly, just as grandfather did, for they held our hopes. Now, some students might stop here and simply write, they refers to those fields. Well, you're not wrong, but it's not specific enough. What are those fields? If you look just a few lines above, you should be able to spot the rice fields. And therefore, your answer is, for the rice fields held our hopes. Do note, it's a lowercase letter t, therefore, start with a lowercase, even though your clue is capitalized. Shall we try the next one? 72b. What does it refer to? It comes from the line, it moved slowly at first. So then the question is, what was moving slowly? Should we be looking before or after this line? You're right if you had said before, because the thing that was moving was a massive wall of water. So what moved slowly at first? We can say that it was the massive wall of water. If you want to be even more specific, you could say the tidal wave. Let's move on. Question 73 is your true-false questions. Now, true-false questions are usually quite straightforward to answer, but please remember that whenever they ask you for a reason, they are actually asking you for evidence. So how do you know the statement is true or false? So you have to provide the evidence. In this case, 72a. At first, Yone could not spot the tidal wave. The clue here is at first. So when was the first time Yone spotted the tidal wave? You will be able to find it in paragraph 3, because he goes, I followed his gaze, but only saw the familiar blue of the sea blending into the sky. What is it, grandfather? I ask. So in this case, if he asks the question, what is it? Does he actually know what he's looking at? The answer is, he could not spot it. And you know that he could not spot it because he only saw the familiar blue of the sky blending into the sea. Let's move to question 73B. It was easy to scale up the mountain. There is only one paragraph in the entire passage that talks about Yone and the villagers going up the mountain, and that was in paragraph number 9. Now, how do you know that it was not easy? Look at the clue. Paraphrase it. It was not easy because the path up the mountain was strenuous, so they clambered. And that brings us to the last true-false statement. The wave was immensely tall. How do we know that it was very, very tall? Looking at paragraph 12, the specific clue says, it rose higher and higher, stretching impossibly from the earth to the sky. Therefore, the wave is truly tall, and we can say that the wave stretched impossibly from the earth to the sky. That brings us to question number 74. Question 74 asks, what were 2 ways the waves were shown to be disruptive? Now, you are supposed to find for me 2 ways that describes the disruptive waves. But question 13 is a nice question because there are in fact 3 things that you can point out. You could choose to tell me about the wave crashing over the village, erasing everything in its path. Or you could pick the clue that talks about how it was so destructive, it had a deafening and earth-shaking roar. Or you could say that when the wave struck the mountain, it sent tremors through the ground beneath them. Any of these clues, any 2, would earn you the 2 solid marks. And that brings us to our final question, question 75. Question 75 is purely an inference question, which is quite straightforward, but you do have to paraphrase. Can you explain clearly how grandfather kept everyone safe? If the keyword here is how, you must tell me what were the steps or the process. It's a 2-mark question, which means that you need to give me 2 steps. So what's the first thing that grandfather did? If you recall, in paragraph 7, what did grandfather do? He yelled at Yone, set fire. So step 1, grandfather, let's start with the subject, set the rice fields on fire. If you mention that, that would earn you 1 mark. But what's the next thing? The next thing has to be inferred from paragraph number 13. No one could speak. We stood frozen, watching as the wave crashed over the village. Everything in its path. The house, streets, the places, they all vanished. But at that point, when the villagers were watching this, where exactly were they? That's right, they're on the mountain. So why did grandfather set the rice fields on fire? That's the first step. The second step is because he wanted to gather everyone and move them from the house up towards the mountain before the tidal wave hit. So that is the second step. So with that, you should be able to now score yourself for booklet A and B out of 90 marks. And that's it for today. Thank you for joining me. If you need more resources, feel free to scan the QR code at OVERMUGGED's PSLE resource page, and we'll see you soon. Bye.